Gotcha.
And you know, he's gotta put all the music in, and then he's gotta put all the comments in, and then it's
I was trying to-
it's kind of a pain.
Oh, okay.
Self-published, or does he have a?
The first one's published, but the second one, this is the,
Okay.
the
So I
second
usually
part.
see
Yeah, but did he self-publish, or did he,
Gotcha. I was
try
get
to
a
see
publisher?
He's
the
self-published.
person when they're talking.
It's
and then I can get
actually,
an idea.
Maybe, I switched
it's a
things out. I'd like
treatise
to
that
see
was
it.
written in
I
the
mean,
eighteen
yeah, I'd
hundreds
like to see
Uh-huh.
it,
in
but
French, and then, by the greatest teacher there was, and then
I used to
an
sit down
American
next to
guy who actually is related to
Check
somebody
it.
here in Plattsburgh, believe it or not, did kind of a translation, but it
usually
was
sit down there.
kind of goofy, and he just died, he's like in his
So-
eighties, and Rocky had to contact him.
Where's she going?
And so Rocky's
He doesn't care
redoing the
about
book and, you know, discussing, because the guy who
2004.
first did it
Okay.
wasn't a singer, well, he was kind of a singer, but he wasn't.
Oh, no, I was just heard.
It's like a chorus.
All right, let's get started. 6 p.m. I'm here, Tom's here, Meg's here, Barb's here, Charles is here, Richard's here. All right, anything for public comment this evening?
No.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Just a couple of quick things. I had an opportunity to meet the new CEO and president of TDC. He'll be starting around April 1st. Dave Champagne. Good conversation. Look forward to having him in that role and having, you know, an ongoing relationship with TDC. So I would anticipate the board and he will have opportunities to interface over the course of the weeks and months and many years to come. So, but he said that he looks forward to working with the town. So it was a positive interaction. My big thing is, did I leave it? I think I just left it in the other room. Give me 30 seconds. I took some notes down from Connie.
Oh, that's news. Meg, you're not going to Florida, or have you been?
What do you mean?
To see, don't you usually go every winter?
We went in January.
Oh, excuse me for breathing, I thought maybe you'd go again. This is when you should be going.
Mexico. You are?
Is he going, you're going?
Again, we went in January, but I'm going again.
See, some people have all the luck, right?
Okay, so,
This weather.
Wow, that is-
sorry.
I'm not gonna sign it.
Really, the bigger thing that I wanted to touch upon is, there's been, little pieces that I've talked about, how obviously many members in our community have had an ongoing concern about the mausoleum, dating back to the original, beginning of this, situation. And, the state of New York stepped up, appointed a receiver, and I think it's really important to note that the receivership process is the one that's in complete control of this process. We have been advised and we have been told that we have no jurisdiction in the sense of, once we step into the situation, you know, we'll have the ownership of it. And we've been pushing back to make sure that we get the appropriate allocation of resources and support to make sure that the state of New York goes good on some things that they should have done originally. A lot of people have seen some of the photos. I'm just gonna pass a couple of them around.
Is the roof fixed now?
So the facility went through you never seen one, right?
Oh, yeah, I actually ran through it.
a significant,
Just for
I've seen the previous.
sit around.
the facility went through a significant rehab. And the facility in that's its current state. Okay, that's its current state.
After construction.
After reconstruction, yes. And so I talked with Connie Goddard, who's the receiver. We had a good, healthy conversation. She's extremely frustrated. She acknowledged that there, obviously, as you can see in the photos, water on the floor, that there is gonna have to be some additional site work that needs gonna be done in the spring. And it wasn't closed out, remember? Because as I said before, that they had pushed the receivership to approximately June. So there were some things that needed to be completed, and that they were going to have to reevaluate things like the sidewalk, possibly putting an outside water channel. I apologize, my handwriting is like hen scratch here as we were chatting. Some of the paint also. one of the things that she acknowledged in this conversation was these facilities don't have heat, okay? And with the marble face, you know, they're always going to be cold. And as we continue to move through this process, you know, before we do the exchange, she is likely going to make several recommendations on how to facilitate this to the best that we can as a municipality. Again, this is not a traditional cemetery, so there may be some recommendations on changing hours of operation and things like it. She's saying this kind of very generically right now, and I think it needs to be understood that way, because there's not too many people out there that are mausoleum directors, you know, and facilitating that. But we have engaged Dave Fleming, we have engaged Connie, she's engaged the partners at the state of New York, so they're aware of it. Many of these items, like the paint for instance, are under warranty. So we go back to that and we start going down that punch list, having some conversations with the contractors, etc. You know, I think it's.
We have contact with the contractors, and are we? She
is the one that's facilitating that. You know, in the conversation that I had with her, I don't wanna put words in her mouth, but my general assessment is, yes, it's very frustrating. Progress has been made, but not to be too quick to jump and finger wag at the situation, because there's an acknowledgement that things need to be fixed. And at least there is a process by which they're going to be fixed. And, you know, thankfully, the receivership didn't end, and it just be passed to the town to then say, now you figure it out. So, yeah.
How exactly, when the receivership ends, is it passed to the town?
That is still up for negotiation,
Okay.
Honestly, and that's why, right from the get-go, it's been made, I believe, very clear, and Jason Dezan, who's the supervisor in Ellenberg, I think would also agree, that we will not be issuing a certificate of occupancy, in the sense that our codes folks will not be certifying that building because it is work done by the state. We don't typically go into state projects and do that process. They're kind of their own animal. So that if they've not met their own standards and it continues, that it will give us leverage to have continued conversations about addressing any future issues.
And
See what I mean?
I get that kind of partly answers what was gonna be my next question, which would be, should we, could we, would we, engage with an engineer to potentially take a look at the building before we took over ownership, to say, yes, this work was done properly, no, the work was not done properly, this is what should be done before you take control of
Right,
that.
so ultimately, as we've been told, when the state in their infinite wisdom is done with the receivership, we will get it. Whether we want it or not, the state statute will lean to
So
us.
regardless of whether we push back or
Correct.
not. Okay.
But it's a matter of working within some parameters that the state is negotiating with us right now, to do the moral and ethical thing for the folks that have loved ones there, protect taxpayers, look at the future moving forward. But there's ongoing conversations that are occurring. I mean, the one benefit that I don't know how to categorize it, to be quite frank, is that Connie has been involved with this, and even in hard times, has said, I'm sticking with this until this is complete. And her experience, having run a very large cemetery system, she's now a coroner. There's an area of expertise here as well as an advocate. She's not doing the bidding of the state. She was asked to step into this role and doing so in a volunteer capacity, so it's been positive thus far.
No, but you said that, they would come back in supposedly in June or before June and work on things that hadn't been completed
Yeah,
yet.
as soon as the weather,
But they didn't fix the sidewalks, so they're still draining
They're-
into the.
and that's why I said,
It seems to me, if they're gonna do the work in there, first, they would have fixed the outside, so you wouldn't have the problems all over again, causing, you know, all the repairs that have been made, that actually, I don't know if they'd be any good.
yes, yes. There is a punch list that will have to be created, assessed, and made a determination to move forward. So, yes, that's the acknowledgement from Connie, that they're obviously work needs to be done. From a standpoint of her supervision, they have made a determination that, the hours of operation are very limited. When there's been high, cold frost days, that they've limited the accessibility. They're still doing burials, they're still doing entombments and stuff.
Who is there on a daily basis, like,
The main office is out of Ellenburg.
but if the hours of availability, somebody's here physically talking and unlocking doors?
They're in control of that. Yeah. And they've put different, I think you said that you were there recently, they've put some different signage and stuff up. Have you seen anything more recently?
No, I don't think there was recently, that was several weeks ago, the doors were locked, and
Yeah, there's one set of doors still
I
locked.
think that was because of the icing
Okay.
situation. So I guess just to back up,
Sure.
when you said the main office out of Ellenburg, they're still involved in this? somehow?
It's still the corporation, that's still incorporated, it's still, a joint entity. And they're having issues in Ellenburg as well.
With the construction?
The
Yeah.
construction issues? You can't speculate, I realize, Michael, but is there an opportunity, does that receivership get extended possibly again, or?
I mean,
I mean,
I would anticipate that the receivership will go until the project is, met,
But our people won't be inspecting it at that point. Now, when we take it over, is the state still the one that's supposed to be inspecting it? Now they say, that's yours, now our codes have to be met.
no, it doesn't, there's.
So we're in charge of it, to repair it, to do all the other things,
Mhm.
but our codes enforcement officers can't be the ones to look at it and say it doesn't meet code.
Who do we talk to besides Connie about this?
Dave Fleming,
Okay.
who's our, counsel as far as that
Should we
goes.
have to pay him, or is the state paying?
We're paying him upfront with, back support, and that's how it's
From
been.
the state?
Yeah.
It just seems like there's so many unanswered questions.
Yeah.
Somebody, is anyone from the state actually involved in this? 'Cause
Uh,
that would be, I think, what we would need.
And that's what's throwing me off, I guess I don't understand,
Maybe this,
if it's in the receivership of the state of New York, how is the Drown, correct? For the mausoleum, you said their main office, how are they still involved in it if it's in receivership with the state?
So the receivership is basically Connie is, for lack of better terms, the principal agent, the CEO, the manager, the supervisor, whatever. The staff members, and some people have left employment there, under Connie's supervision. Some of their staff members have seen reduced hours, changes, et cetera.
Okay,
But Whispering Maples is still an entity, a corporation, there. So Connie has the responsibility to get that organized. And there's kind of multiple components, and this is gonna be one of the ones that, before this all occurred, this was my ongoing concern, was the paperwork portion of it. Every contract that was sold, every space that was sold, because there was a quote-unquote suspicious fire that occurred, years ago, where some of the documents were, I mean, this goes back to 2015 is when the
Yeah.
town began
Yeah, a long
originally.
time.
Mhm.
So I, again, don't have a hard and fast date because I don't think the state of New York does, you know, but they've at least identified at the moment, the problems they're the ones investing the money into it. Yes, as taxpayers, you know, that money comes out of, you know, all of us, like, you know, many of the state's investments,
Yeah.
but they've taken a different approach to it. So,
Seems like it might be a good time to get Betty Little and Billy Jones back involved.
they are actively involved in it as
Are
well.
they aware of these
Yes.
things?
I've shared photos with them, called Billy and Betty,
Cause
and
they were able to, pat themselves on the back for getting us funding for it, which
Mhm.
was good, but they used that, you know, as
Yeah.
a promotional thing as politicians do, but with that comes the responsibility of continued
oh, they're
care
they're
and follow through.
Betty, when she has been up in the district, before, the pre-construction visited the site to look at it again. So, I mean, they're not stepping away from this at all, so.
Just seems like now is a pretty
Yeah.
critical point.
Well, I think that's my biggest fear, is when they decide that they're gonna,
Yeah.
regardless of what it is, it's our responsibility. And it just seems that we don't have a lot of recourse with that, nor do we have a lot of input or the opportunity to say, yeah, we agree to what we're receiving.
Yeah, because you talk about the inevitable, but I guess, you know, assurances of, these things concern me
Yeah.
as someone
Well,
who's
it-
serving on a town board. I just,
The- the-
I mean, I go and look at these things, I don't just look at pictures and,
Yeah.
and I respect Connie, and I realize she's
Oh,
doing.
yeah, and I don't
really
mean
do,
it as a
but,
ding on her at all,
um,
because certainly I think, you know,
Ultimately, the responsibility rests with the state, in terms of their oversight. And the committee that's supposed to be on that includes the Attorney General and the Governor and the Comptroller. And so if we have any leverage, it would have to be with them.
I'm going to, yeah, I'm going to imagine that Jason and I will be taking another trip down to Albany again, like we did before,
Well, I'll probably see the Comptroller
so.
at some point, so.
Yeah.
yeah, and I know you will take your eye off the ball,
Oh, yeah.
Michael, but we have to keep our eye
No,
on the
I-
ball and raise our
well,
concerns
it's
or.
a hot
Absolutely.
button item right now. I
You know,
mean,
it's easy
you
to
know,
forget this
It's-
stuff.
We're hearing it
it's,
from a lot of different directions, so.
Connie has been, put in contact with the press as well, so, yeah, so, just wanted to keep it out in front.
But if you look at it, I mean, I'm, from the beginning, yes, there's all the holes and everything, now it's the same problem with water coming in and the freezing and the paint peeling and, you know, after it's been done, so, it couldn't have been done that well, you gotta have outdoor, you know there's no heat in here, so it's gotta be made so it's gonna handle the cold. Yeah, well,
So, anticipate more conversations to come, so, just keep me updated, alright? Pretty light from here, draft minutes, and then, to request the New York State Planning Federation Conference, sending people for continued ed,
It's good,
so.
so Melina, it's not going for that one?
yeah, looks like Matt's gonna try to make this one.
Alright. That's what I have. Like I said, I will keep you updated on the other item.
Okay, thanks.
I did want to bring up one thing, just to see when we're gonna be, how this is progressing in terms of our, request for raises and the, moratorium we put on that.
Got delayed due to, the snow, and she needs to get rescheduled.
Okay, so that's still supposed to happen sometime soon. Okay.
Yep, and salary calibration does not necessarily mean that people will get raises. I think it's important to note that, because some individuals may, be, identified at a higher rate. There's salary compressions and various things. So what we're doing is we're doing a salary study, for calibrations possibly.
Yeah, so I just, you know, as long as we get that done before budget time.
She's coming here and she's gonna do, just kind of like, what's her process, you know?
Part of the process is that she'll engage in conversations through like a survey type tool, and then she'll do, sit-down interviews and have conversations. Then she'll do a, kind of an analysis, a comparative analysis with some other municipalities and other types of businesses, et cetera. So,
Do you know what her timeline is?
no, not now, because we need to reschedule it because of,
I don't mean her timeline to come, I mean her timeline to get it done once she's done the work.
well, she was gonna be able to front load earlier, and it was, so no, I do not have that. Highway maybe? So yeah, more to come. I have communicated that to all the department heads.
Okay. I'm sorry, I probably should have known that.
No,
It's postponed, I didn't know.
no. That, and the snow has been the issue for both of it, and, you know, honestly,
It went out that door. Oh.
okay, thank you. It becomes one of those things where we're almost, hopefully, let's cross our fingers, out of the winter months, so,
Three more
Crazy.
weeks.
so. I'm crossing my fingers and keeping hope. Isn't spring like supposed to be 2 weeks away at this point, so.
Cross your fingers.
Three more weeks.
Totally crossed.
21st of March, you have 3 weeks.
Okay, so, we're getting close. Anything on deputy? No?
Not one application, not from the county or
Okay.
from the,
I'm getting ready to put out a news and notices, kind of our e-communication thing, so we can put a little ad in that as well, and hopefully that will produce some. Yep. Okay, so, anything else? All right,
Thank you, sir.
thank you. Drive safe, everyone.
You too.
time,
6:21.
Good night, guys.
So I have a question about this mausoleum.
See you later, May.
I don't have a heart attack when I ask. Does it have to stay in that form?
As we have been told,
I'm not saying tear it down.
No,
I'm just asking.
I understand that. As I've been told, they explored that as an option for consideration,
What did they explore?
taking the roof off and making it four-sided exposed.
Yes.
And they felt as though that was not a viable option.
Why?
I'd have to go into, we'd have to reengage in some conversation.
The reason I ask is it's
So-
all over Europe.
You know what? I don't think
No,
I've
no.
been able to hear
You
that.
know, like,
No,
they'll
no.
have, you know, a wall, but it'll have a little
Well, I
thing
mean-
like that on the top. And I'm thinking, this is unheated anyway.
I mean, right
And the
from,
rooms are expensive.
right from the get-go, the conversation that I had with them is, why are we putting a flat roof on a building in the North Country?
With no heat.
Okay, but, right, but I mean, like, forget about all the other factors though. I mean, flat roof, then no heat, then so all these types of things. What it boils down to is when Jason and I went down to Albany, government recognized that someone dropped the ball, okay?
You think?
So, but they're also basically saying one of two things though. They're saying they're gonna take some ownership of it, okay? So, okay, you take ownership of it. If you think you can do better, you take ownership of it, and we're not gonna give you a dollar, a dime, or anything. So, we are, with Dave Fleming and Connie, poking, pushing, prodding, advocating along the way.
But once you get it, let's say 5 years from now, the roof starts leaking again. I mean, this could happen every year,
Yes.
for that matter, on a flat roof in the North Country with no heat. Actually, there was supposed to be heat in it, from the beginning.
There was
I have
al-
the newspaper
There
articles
was,
and
there was
everything.
also supposed to be chandeliers in some
Oh,
of
yeah.
them.
So, can the town of Plattsburgh then, unilaterally, because now you own it, let's say, take the roof off and make 4 walls?
I'm not going down that road at the very moment, but that has not escaped my mind,
Okay.
okay? So,
Because it may be that somewhere down the road, and I'm not saying it's gonna be in 2 years, it could be
Yeah.
20 years, that there has to be a remedy, that this just simply is not
Yes.
working.
this, and that's where I think that we expose ourselves to continuous and new liabilities by entombing more people there, okay? That becomes
Yeah, because what if you,
a huge issue, but I've heard, Debbie, from people that say, oh yeah, you know what, you know, maybe in a couple of years when it's, you know, up and running again, that, you know, I'll go to Ricky and, you know, and buy a space.
Well, no, I realize that, you know, and that
So-
money certainly could be used for, we're keeping it up and running and
But
and
there's-
expenses and stuff, but on the other
But there
hand,
are funds.
you know, some people say, well, I buried my person there, my family member there, because they didn't wanna be on the ground, and I'm thinking, well, then you take the, what do they wanna be in? You know, are they, a wall?
But there-
Uh,
but there-
What
but
do they
there-
wanna be in, you want a roof on it, or
But
are you
there
dictating?
are, but
know.
there are perpetual care funds that
I
have been
know that.
allocated.
Which
there
are
are-
zero, you know,
There
in the
are,
end.
but there are perpetual care funds there. The corporation itself still has funds,
Yeah,
okay? Lastly, the.
it won't last forever.
But you're out, I'm
No,
giving.
no,
I'm-
I see that.
But then, the other part to it is the Division of Cemeteries, what we're working on is to establish the precedent of continued opportunities to go back
No,
for
I see.
future funding. So there's multiple,
Layers.
and the last portion of it, and I mean, I'm pretty confident that I said it at the public hearing type thing that we had, or the informational session is, and I've heard from members that have sons and daughters and veterans and grandparents and all, you know, all those folks there, that have said, if you create and allocate a line for, to accept gifts, that we will potentially give you, okay, you know, what do you call it, it's,
Endowment.
yeah, kind of, like, so, I'm not saying that I'm not concerned about that, but I do believe that there will be cash flow coming in to make sure to support that. The other part to it is,
At least while you're in office, right?
no, but,
Oops. You know, perpetual care, I don't wanna, you know, I know, my parents have a
Sure.
perpetual care. There's no money for perpetual care. Unless you're selling cemetery plots or you're selling entombment places, there's no money. Those are what pay for the care today. And if it's not being, if they're not being bought and people are being cremated and they're put on grandma's shelf instead of in the mausoleum or in the ground, there's no money for perpetual care. I've had a lot of conversations with cemeteries about that.
but if the money is managed in a way, like investment and, you know, kind of the endowment model, that you don't draw off, you don't pull all the money off, okay? And then you create a Friends of the Mausoleum group, okay? There are ways to manage that, much better than the current situation.
Well, there is, but until you need a new roof and you have to put $50,000 or $60,000 in, and then, you know.
Well, that's the problem with perpetual care in this type of
Exactly.
situation versus a cemetery. A cemetery basically is lawn care.
Exactly, and they don't even have money for that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
And
saying, you know,
This is
so.
a much different situation than.
None of that gets washed
Well,
on us at all.
I know,
It's
it's
having
a terrible
those,
situation.
it's having those conversations, and it is, I mean, we were almost bullied into the situation of just taking it.
I know,
So,
I know,
um,
I know.
that's why I wanna use the process to our favor.
At
And
least
the
to keep
pro,
it going.
and the process right now is, we have 2 advocates, plus we have 2 elected officials that are state representatives that understand it.
Yep.
We've got a board, I mean, we're able to get our arms wrapped around the information we have right now.
Mhm.
And we just keep plugging away at it, so,
It's nasty,
it is,
it's nasty.
it is. It is a disgrace. It is
Yes,
an
it is.
absolute
And I'm
disgrace.
not saying you need to tear down anything, I'm just saying, but you need to, I think there should be 3 or 4 or 5 different scenarios whereby if it goes bad, and it could go to south in a hurry, you could do this or this or this, but you have to know if you can do this, this or this. That's the problem.
I mean, there's a very, very fine line right now about being involved in those conversations.
Oh,
from
I
this-
will cut this from the tape.
No,
Don't worry.
No, that's fine, I mean, but from the standpoint, Debbie, of the state of New York basically wanted to say, this is the statute, this is how we're gonna roll, and we've been told, you do not own these facilities.
No, you don't.
You know what I mean? So, but who gets the phone calls? We're getting the phone calls,
Well,
he's
you're
getting the phone calls, you know, we have family but, you know, people have
Right,
family and
they're
friends,
family
and
members.
so,
Yeah, well, I do, I know people who
Yeah.
are very.
Absolutely.
so, yes.
And I think what you're saying, Michael, like the Friends of the Mausoleum we've had that discussion where I've been approached by several individuals that said, look, we have a family member that's in here, can we do something? You know, when are you gonna have something available? And, you know, my answer has been, look, until it's out of the receivership.
Oh, you mean they wanna have another family, they want a family member?
No, they
buried?
wanna provide additional funds, they feel that there's something that they can do, they're willing to make sure that the facility stays
Yeah.
up to snuff, because I think we have to get it up to snuff
I'm,
before we can keep it up to
yeah,
snuff.
I'm not,
That's my concern.
I'm not trying to over dramatize this at all.
No, it's a nasty
But-
situation,
Oh,
it has been from the get-go,
Right.
from when it was built.
Yeah, I have had more people in my office that I have consoled
About the
in
mausoleum.
tears. You know, just because a lot of it though is, it's sons and daughters or other family members that it's their loved one in there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this wasn't my parents' wishes, or, you know,
I know,
so,
I know.
and it's not a place for judgment of, but this is the situation. We're gonna collectively work on it. There's still lots of answers that we need to work on, and we keep plugging away, so, alright.
And
But,
and the fun times.
sorry, the state's not